Inflation is a word we hear a lot, but what does it really mean? Simply put, inflation is when prices of things we buy, like food, clothes and gas, go up over time. Imagine you have $10 today and you can buy a toy with it. Next year, because of inflation, that same toy might cost $11. Your $10 can't buy the same amount anymore. This means the value of your money has decreased. Inflation isn't always a bad thing. A little bit of inflation is normal and even shows a healthy economy. But when prices increase too quickly, it becomes a problem. People have to work harder to afford basic necessities, and their savings lose value faster. Understanding what causes inflation is important for everyone, from policymakers to everyday consumers. In the following sections, we'll explore the different factors that can lead to inflation and how they impact our lives. We'll also discuss how governments and individuals can navigate this complex economic phenomenon. Imagine a store having a huge sale on the latest video game. Everyone rushes in, wanting to buy it. The store, overwhelmed by the demand, might increase the price, knowing people are willing to pay more. This is a simple example of demand-pull inflation. Demand-pull inflation happens when there's too much money chasing too few goods. People have more money to spend, but there aren't enough products or services available to meet that demand. This imbalance pushes prices upwards. A classic example is the period after World War II. People had saved money during the war and were eager to spend it. However, factories were slow to transition back to producing consumer goods, leading to shortages and rising prices. More recently, the global economy experienced demand-pull inflation after the COVID-19 pandemic. As lockdowns eased and economies reopened, there was a surge in demand for goods and services. Combined with supply chain disruptions, this led to a rapid increase in prices. Sometimes inflation isn't driven by increased demand, but rather by rising costs for businesses. This is called cost-push inflation. Imagine that the price of oil, a key ingredient in many products, suddenly skyrockets. Companies that use oil in their production process, like transportation or manufacturing, have to raise their prices to maintain their profits. Several factors can contribute to cost-push inflation. Supply shocks, like the 1970s oil crisis caused by geopolitical turmoil in the Middle East, can disrupt the flow of essential goods and drive up prices. Natural disasters such as hurricanes or earthquakes can also damage infrastructure and disrupt supply chains, leading to higher costs. Another driver of cost-push inflation is rising labor costs. When wages increase significantly, businesses often pass those higher labor costs onto consumers in the form of higher prices. This is especially true in industries where labor costs make up a large portion of total expenses. Have you ever noticed that when people expect prices to go up, they often do? This is because expectations about future inflation can become a self-fulfilling prophecy. If people believe that prices will rise significantly in the coming months, they are more likely to demand higher wages and to accept paying higher prices for goods and services. This behavior, in turn, can lead to actual inflation. For example, if workers anticipate higher inflation, they might negotiate for larger wage increases to maintain their purchasing power. Businesses, facing higher labor costs, might then raise prices to protect their profit margins. This cycle of expectations and price increases can create an inflationary spiral. Central banks, like the Federal Reserve in the United States, closely monitor inflation expectations. They understand that if people and businesses lose confidence in the central bank's ability to control inflation, it becomes much more challenging to bring inflation down. Section 5. The fuel to the fire expansionary policies. Governments and central banks have powerful tools at their disposal to influence the economy. Two such tools are monetary policy, controlled by central banks, and fiscal policy, controlled by governments. While these policies are essential for economic growth and stability, they can also contribute to inflation if not managed carefully. Monetary policy involves managing the money supply and interest rates. When central banks lower interest rates, it becomes cheaper for individuals and businesses to borrow money. This can stimulate spending and investment, leading to economic growth. However, if interest rates are kept too low for too long, it can lead to excessive borrowing and spending, potentially fueling inflation. Fiscal policy, on the other hand, involves government spending and taxation. When governments increase spending or cut taxes, it injects more money into the economy. This can boost demand and create jobs, but it can also lead to inflation if the economy is already operating near its full capacity. Section 6. Trade wars and their price tags, tariffs and inflation. In today's interconnected world, international trade plays a crucial role in our economies. However, trade disputes and protectionist policies, such as tariffs, can have unintended consequences, including contributing to inflation. Tariffs are essentially taxes imposed on imported goods, making them more expensive for domestic consumers and businesses. When a country imposes tariffs on goods from another country, it can trigger a chain reaction. The targeted country might retaliate with its own tariffs, leading to a trade war. As tariffs escalate, the costs of imported goods rise, pushing up prices for consumers. Businesses that rely on imported components for their production processes also face higher costs, which they may pass on to consumers. For example, in recent years, the United States has imposed tariffs on billions of dollars worth of goods imported from China. China in turn has retaliated with tariffs on U.S. products. These tariffs have increased the costs of a wide range of goods for consumers and businesses in both countries, contributing to inflationary pressures. Section 7. The Balancing Act, the Federal Reserve's response to inflation. The Federal Reserve, like many central banks around the world, aims to keep inflation in check while also promoting maximum employment and stable economic growth. It's a delicate balancing act, and the Fed uses a variety of tools to achieve its goals. One of the Fed's primary tools is adjusting interest rates. When inflation is rising too quickly, the Fed can raise interest rates to cool down the economy. Higher interest rates make it more expensive to borrow money, which can reduce spending and investment, slowing down economic growth and, in turn, easing inflationary pressures. Conversely, if inflation is too low, the Fed can lower interest rates to encourage borrowing and spending, stimulating economic activity. The Fed also communicates its intentions and outlook to the public to manage inflation expectations. By clearly signaling its policy path, the Fed aims to provide certainty and stability to financial markets and the broader economy. Section 8. Weathering the storm: investing during inflation. Inflation can erode the value of cash savings, making it essential for investors to consider assets that can outpace inflation over time. Here are a few investment strategies that have historically performed well during periods of inflation. Stocks. While stock markets can be volatile in the short term, over the long run, stocks have generally outpaced inflation. Companies with strong pricing power, meaning they can raise prices without losing customers, tend to perform well during inflationary periods. Commodities. Commodities are raw materials like oil, gold, and agricultural products. As inflation rises, the prices of commodities tend to increase as well, making them a potential hedge against inflation. Real estate is a tangible asset that can appreciate in value over time. Rental income from properties can also help offset the effects of inflation. Inflation-protected securities, or TIPS. TIPS are government bonds that are indexed to inflation. The principal value of TIPS adjusts with changes in the Consumer Price Index, providing investors with a stream of income that keeps pace with inflation. It's important to note that no investment is without risk, and past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results. It's always advisable to consult with a financial advisor to determine the best investment strategy based on your individual circumstances and risk tolerance. Section 9. Conclusion: navigating the choppy waters of inflation. Inflation is a complex economic phenomenon with far-reaching consequences. From eroding the value of our savings to influencing central bank policies, inflation touches many aspects of our lives. Understanding the different causes of inflation, from demand pull and cost push factors to the role of expectations, is crucial for making informed economic decisions. While inflation can create challenges, especially for those on fixed incomes or with limited savings, it's important to remember that moderate inflation is a natural part of a healthy economy. By staying informed about economic trends, managing our finances responsibly, and making prudent investment choices, we can navigate the choppy waters of inflation and secure our financial well-being.